Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri.
Hi, and welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And I am super excited for our guest today, Dr. Maggie Worrell. She brings her sharp insights from her diverse global background to inspire bolder thinking and braver action, which I absolutely love that. She's a speaker, author, Forbes columnist, podcaster, mother of four, women's advocate, media commentator, adventure traveler, which I'm excited to hear about, PhD, board advisor, and inspiring barista. I mean, I could keep going on with this chick. Okay, you guys are in for a treat. I just can't wait to hear a little bit more about you. So, her passionate energy, coupled with her ability to distill theory into actionable advice, has set her apart on the global stage. Trusted by global brands such as Salesforce, NASA, Dell, Global, Johnson & Johnson, Shell, and Amazon, just to a few, to deliver powerful content. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Teri.
So tell us, bring us up to speed. Like how did you get on this path? What has been your journey? Bring us up to speed for folks that don't know you yet. I know it's a really loaded question.
It is a loaded question. And I know we've got 20 minutes. So, I could spend 20 minutes starting out from, I grew up on a big sister of seven on a small dairy farm in rural Australia. So I have traveled many different paths around the world over the since I left home as an 18-year-old to go to university, studied business, traveled around the world, backpacking for a few years, started my career in the corporate realm. And then in my late 20s, early 30s, went back to school, studied psychology, coaching, and I've spent the last 20 something years in the field of personal and professional development in one role or another, sort of doing coaching a lot in the beginning. And now I do a lot more speaking and writing and media and everything else.
I love it. Fantastic. So what I always love highlighting, women entrepreneurs, especially that this path is not an easy path.
Nope.
And, we can have our moments where it's like, it's usually this growth. I always tell people that if you want to do personal development, go do a business, right? Because everything gets exposed on this journey for us. And so, what has been one of those challenges or barriers that you've had to overcome to get to where you are today?
Look, the biggest barrier I have ever had and still, have to work to overcome has been the one in my own head, the little voice that says, who do you think you are to do that? Once I have got over that barrier, then I'm good with figuring out all the other barriers. But that's definitely always the most challenging thing. It's just having that mindset of belief that, I can do this, because as any female entrepreneur knows, that the road isn't easy. There's going to be curveballs. Things won't always go your way. And sometimes, for instance, this pandemic, right? Sometimes there's things that happen that can turn your whole business on its head and you could never have prepared for us. So I think just that really believing in your own abilities and trusting your own strengths and gifts and the vision that you have, and then learning to iterate as you go along. And I think also I should mention I have 4 kids. And so, over the journey, I mean, my husband and I have 4 kids, so all mine, no multiples, and juggling, having children as well, because women, it's more complex for women. There's so many more pressures and expectations. And I'm sure not all of your listeners have children or might want to have children.
But I think a lot of them do. I think this is, you're bringing up a really great point, because I think so often we have so many roles within the home, and then outside the home, and there's like our career, and there's not really an easy stop and go, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because you don't have that's a 9 to 5, right? And so calls come in and things happen and things are always kind of moving and up in the air. And so juggling all of that and trying to keep your sanity, within this is difficult to challenge. I mean, difficult to balance at times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know myself, continually lowering the bar sometimes to good enough is a key part of, I think, what's allowed me to pursue my own aspirations outside the home. I mean, though, I've worked from home for ever since I left the corporate world, but except when I'm traveling, which has been a lot actually over the last decade. I have done a lot of travel until March last year.
When everything shut down.
Yeah. But before that, I mean, I was traveling globally and all the time, a lot. And so certainly over the last 10 years. And I think just really sometimes getting off our own back. I think as women, we can have this bar set so high of what we aspire to, and it can leave us living with this lingering sense of inadequacy, that we're always like not organized enough, not excellent enough, not experienced enough, not accomplished enough, not successful enough, whatever we're doing, we tend to hone in on what we could have done better. And when we do something really well, we're not always great at celebrating what we nailed, or what we're often making these negative comparisons. And so that's an ongoing journey, something I've had to work at and still work at, in terms of just being supportive, being my own best cheerleader versus my own biggest critic.
And I think that's such a process for people. So what was that process like for you? Because I know there's an ongoing journey for all of us, how do we, because I just want to take a moment, because I think this is so juicy what we're talking about, because I think so many listeners can relate to this. And if they've experienced it, I shouldn't say if, when they've experienced it, right? Like, how have you, transformed that enough to where you can recognize it and acknowledge it? Because there's one thing when it's unconscious and we don't recognize it's there, but it sounds like you've done the work to get to the place where it's like, I'm conscious of it, right?
Yeah. It's funny. I wrote about this in my latest book, You've Got This, which I actually put an entire chapter in just for women, which is to get off your own back yourself more and doubt yourself less. Because I think we women tend to be tougher on ourselves than men. But in You've Got This, I kind of shared my own journey of learning to define my doubts. It's not that I don't have doubts, but I have got much better at not letting my doubts sit in the driver's seat. So the doubts still rise up. Who do you think you are to do that? The whole imposter syndrome, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just recognizing that not everything you tell yourself is true. And we can buy into that inner dialogue and treat it as though that is the truth. I'm not good enough. I need more experience. I'm never going to be able to, I'm whatever. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm whatever. And when we can recognize, you know what, Maggie, that's just a story that you're spinning. What else could you tell yourself? And I have gotten good at practicing, well, what's another way I could look at this that actually leaves me feeling more positive and purposeful?
Yeah, that builds you up instead of tears you down. And I work with a lot of like high achieving entrepreneurs. And I will tell you, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're at in business, everyone has experienced that imposter syndrome at some level in their business. And I feel like it really starts to make a name for itself when you start to get to that place of uncomfortability. As soon as you start taking that step forward to something new, something that you haven't done before, something that is uncomfortable. And as we start to get inch towards that, it's like, and then that story comes alive. And you're absolutely right. When we engage that story, right. And I talk a lot about the brain and how the brain hops in there and the brain starts to engage in that evidence. And we can go down that rabbit hole really fast
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we allow ourselves to do that. And
Yeah. And I think that's where actively looking to your point, you just spoke to the confirmation bias we have, that we look for evidence that supports how we're viewing the world and how we're viewing ourselves. And so actively looking for evidence that flies in the face of it. And I remember when I was thinking about having our fourth child, and I had already kind of knew I wanted to start my own business and leave corporate stuff. And I remember thinking, well, you can't have 4 kids and have a career. You just can't, like, that was my story. And I would kind of go, well, most women I know, I mean, anyone who I didn't know anyone who had 4 kids. So I had to go, like, has anyone else out there got 4 kids in a career? And I literally would ask people, do you know anyone? And every now and again, someone would tell me. And I wanted to talk to them, like, how do you do that? Because I didn't have any role models. I had so few. In fact, I had no role models of women who wanted a relatively large family and had careers. And, my own mother never had a career, was very much at home. And I grew up in rural Australia. So there was just very few, I would say, empowered, powerful women in my orbit. And so, so for me, just going out and looking for evidence that contradicted the disempowering belief, the belief that was going to keep me from going out after what I wanted, even though it's been hard work and all of, it's been it's been challenging. But I think sometimes we hold ourselves back before the world ever holds us back. And
agreed. That's a great way of looking at it too. And here's the other thing is, like, I always talk about these 2 realities. There's always 2 realities, right? There's the reality that we are living in, and then there's a reality that we like to live in, or it was a previous, there's always these 2 realities. And I think you're absolutely, this is some gold nugget that you're laying down here as far as, we get to choose which reality we get to stay in and live in. And so if my brain is choosing the doom and gloom, we're going to find doom and gloom. If we're going to choose what is happening that is working, right? Like, I love this because I want to unpack this a bit, because, what you're telling. Go ahead.
I would say, something I've long said, and is that we don't see the world as it is. Yeah. We see it as we are. Right? We see it through our eyes. Right now I'm actually looking out the window and it's gray and cooler today and a bit rainy here. I live just outside Washington, D.C. in North Virginia. And someone said this morning, I went out for coffee and they said, oh, what a gloomy day. I said, I just love that it's cooler. It's been really warm. I'm just loving that it's cooler. And so we're just having 2 different experiences of exactly the same weather. Yeah. And I think just recognizing, 1, it's our perception, but 2, the language that we use. Yeah. And so you can use language. You could say, my life is so stressful right now. It's also hard. It's impossible to get anything done, blah, blah, blah. And that becomes the reality that you live in through your language. Our language isn't just descriptive. It's also generative. So we're not just describing, oh, it's a rainy day. It's like, but if I say, oh, it's gloomy, what a miserable day, that's going to make me feel a bit miserable, versus, yeah, it's raining outside. Yeah. It's awesome. I'm loving it. So just being careful. I think as women, we can get into habits of talking ourselves down, and of focusing even in our language on what we can't do and on the barriers we're facing and on what we don't have and the resources that we wish we had and what's missing. I don't have enough support. And instead kind of go, you know what? Well, you do have some support. So focusing on the support you do have. You do have skills. Yes. You do have resources. And no, it may not be all the resources you want. It may not be all the funding you want. It may not be as supportive a husband or partner or, I don't know, whoever that you'd like, but you do have something. And I think the more we focus on what we do have and whether it's inside ourselves or in our environment, and then we seek to make the most of that, it helps us actually even see other opportunities. Well, I should reach out to that person, and I should, and I think it can totally shift not just our reality, but actually help us. We actually know from the brain science, it actually expands our creative thinking, and we see opportunities that we would miss otherwise.
Absolutely. I'm singing your tune. You and I are very much in alignment. My background, I was a therapist for 24 years, and I combined, so that I took that and I combined it with energy psychology because I found those faster ways of helping people. And then I started to apply the principles of quantum physics for businesses so that we could clear the blocks so that they could, expand. And you're absolutely right. There's and changing the vibrations and what we're living for, because I just had this conversation earlier today with a client because she started spiraling, and I said, okay, we've got to stop the spiral. We get to choose. And, I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And we quickly cleared this belief system that was so ingrained in her that it has to be a struggle. And so when the situation that happened today, it was, in my eyes, okay, it was a little bump, like a little speed bump. And in her eyes, it was complete devastation, right? And so I was like, okay, we've got to shift this perspective. We've got to, really help support this. And it was as soon as we were able to identify those blocks in her brain that was like, this equals that. It was so easy to clear it and be like, okay. And then she was like, okay, we shifted this now. And it's powerful. It's absolutely so powerful. And I love everything that you're speaking about. It's completely resonating. And I think that it's powerful work when we get to look at this and, pause for a moment to see what's coming up for us. And then how do we, even just slowing this down, right? Just slowing down. I guess sometimes when my clients, or if I've had clients that start to spiral out, and it's like, okay, how do we stop the spiral? And then we start to shift it to go back to where we do desire, because we all desire. And I think, one of our maybe our only entitlement in this lifetime is to be happy, right? And so that is something that is like, how do we get back to the baseline of, being in that place of gratitude and joy?
You're right. And I think we can sometimes we become so habituated that we don't even realize that it becomes transparent to us how we live in certain mindsets where we're always looking at the negative, or we're always looking at the worst in others or the worst in ourselves, or always thinking everyone's untrustworthy, or we're looking at things through a lens, and that shapes the reality. And to your point on, being able to short circuit that. And I always think, if I'm going into that downward spiral, and let's face it, none of us are immune to that, but it's not about whether or not you sometimes get triggered. If you're human, you're going to get triggered. I mean, maybe you can get to a level of evolution and you're never triggered. I get there's a few people that are there. I'm not. But we can get triggered, but it's how long you stay triggered.
Yes.
And when you notice I'm triggered, like I just lost this bid, or, someone just did something, or I feel rejected, or whatever it is, and going, okay, Margie, you're spinning a story right now that's like, oh, I'm not good enough. Or like, okay, you know what? What's the real truth here? How else could you look at this? Yeah. And I think the sooner we can catch ourselves doing that. But I also, a few years ago, I had a week with Richard Branson on his island in the BVI, British Virgin Islands. And I got to meet some awesome other entrepreneurs and leaders. And I met Marianne Williamson, who's a woman who I admired for a long time because of her writing and work. And I met her and I just was a little bit kind of ooh-ahry because her books had been quite powerful books for me. And she said, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm an author, but, no, not like you. I mean, I'm not big like you. I'm just really small. And in my desire to be humble, I also diminished myself.
Yeah.
And she actually looked at me and she said, you could just say I'm an author. She said, there is nothing holy in diminishing yourself.
Wow. That's a great, I love that. That's a powerful statement right there.
Yeah. And I shared that because I have shared that story so many times since and said that to other women, in that we can often diminish ourselves. I mean, yeah, there's enough other people who'll be happy to diminish you, but don't diminish
yourself on purpose. Yeah.
There's going to be people who'll throw stones at you and won't like you and won't think your stuff's good enough, whatever. But back yourself. And I think we need to back each other. I really feel incredibly strongly. I wrote a Forbes column for International Women's Day this year, that as women, we have to challenge other women when we see them talking themselves down. So not only go out and advocate for other women and amplify their voice, but when you see someone who's not owning her worth as a woman, you call her out and say, come on, you are bigger than that. I know you are. I see greatness in you. You are awesome. I see all these gifts you have. Stop focusing on the things that you're not brilliant at or what you haven't done. And I know myself over the years that, you know, women who have championed me, sometimes in those moments when the doubts are really loud in your head and they're like, yeah, of course you can do that. I'm like, can I? And it's like, I know it deep in my heart that I can, but gee, I needed someone to say, you've got this in a certain moment, which is part of the reason I wrote this book, because I wanted to say to others, you've got this. You absolutely can.
I love that. And I think that's just a great reminder for all of us to, even if we meet people from, you know, just strangers on the street and or if caught up in those conversations, you know, call people out on it, right? Call people out and, you know, fill them up, you know, even like you said, you know, we all have this, we all got it within ourselves. Sometimes we get disconnected from it. But it's truly, you know, I truly believe that we all have everything that we have within ourselves for this path, for this journey. And we just got to tap into it. We got to tap in, tune in, and turn it on to connect with that inner powerful being that we are. So, and if you find another woman, this goes out to all the ladies listening today, find another woman that's having a moment of that moment of weakness. Cheer her on, be her champion, be her biggest cheerleader in that moment. Because what can we do if we all, you know, what is it? A rising tide
lifts all boats.
Lifts all boats, right? So absolutely. I love this. Wonderful. So what's a fun tip or tool that you would like to leave with our listeners? I mean, this has been such amazing stuff that you've been talking about already, but is there anything that else, a nugget that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
You know what? I don't usually share this one, but I'm going to, because I sense, my intuitive sense is there's people listening that this would be really helpful for. And it's something I actually run Live Brave Women's Weekends, and I always get the women on my weekends, or even when I do women's speaking at conferences and what have you, and I encourage you to do this now if you're listening, and just play with me here and just experiment with me here. But I encourage you, ideally stand tall, stand up, put your feet shoulder width apart. You know, close your eyes, breathe in faith and breathe out fear, and put your hand on your heart as you do that, and take a couple of big deep breaths, like really just breathe in and just tap that bravest part within you. You know, it lives in there, that the brave heart within you. And just breathe in faith, breathe out fear for, you know, just a few inhalations, exhalations, and then just ask yourself, what would I do right now if I was being brave? And imagine yourself doing it. And then with your eyes closed, just take a step forward, like you're stepping into action toward that. And my experience is that when we really connect to that deepest part within us, that part that transcends our fears and transcends our doubts, and we connect to that voice of truth, you know, like God within us, whatever you want to call it, we know, yes, I have got this and I can do it. And so connecting to that place within you in a physical way, not just as an exercise, but physically connecting your body, hold yourself like the powerful woman that you are, and then just take a step forward towards that future, I think can be, I've done that many times myself. I have got this, I can do this, and I am and more than worthy for what it is that I seek most. And I think that can be really powerful.
That's brilliant. I love it. What a way to wrap up our conversation today. And I love it, leaving us on a really high note. Thank you so much. Where can people connect and collaborate and just, you know, be snoopy and come and check out your stuff?
Oh, well, thank you, Teri. Look, I'm on social media, so please connect with me, LinkedIn and Facebook, Insta, etc. But my website would be the best place to go, which is my name, margieworrell.com. And they can download You've Got This manifesto from my website. I think it's a one-page printer-friendly handout that's just sums up what the heart of what I've just said. Or obviously just grab a copy of You Got This, because I think it's a book that women, I've yet to have a woman who hasn't told me that it's been incredibly inspiring. So I look forward to connecting with people there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for, being courageous and stepping into your journey and your power and, lifting others as you climb. So thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you, Teri.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.